especially comparing them to the darkest dark and lightest light. We're going to have exercises and projects to help us get better at seeing the true values. Avoid tunnel vision. Try to change the way you're looking at your drawing to get a fresh perspective. You can flip it upside down, look in the mirror, tilt your head, tilt the drawing, lean back, anything to get you out of tunnel vision and see the values accurately. Tunnel vision is when we work on an area for a while and we get so focused on it that we can't see anything else. It's like we're looking at the world through a tunnel. We see only a small portion of the whole picture. The problem with this is that we tend to stretch the values in that small portion to a full value range, or closer to a full value range. For example, this ear is in shadow, so all the values here are dark values. When we compare them to the lights, all the ear values are clearly much darker. But if we get tunnel vision and we're working on that ear for a while, and we forget to look at the full picture, the lightest values in the ear start to appear lighter than they actually are. Again, because in relation to everything else we're seeing within that tunnel, they are lighter. What happens often with beginner artists is that these lighter shadows end up way too light in their drawings. They're not shadows anymore, and that breaks the effect of light and shadow on form. So make it a habit to constantly back up from your drawing. If you're standing, then physically walk back. If you're sitting, then lean back and squint. We squinted at our value scales to see major differences and blur similarities. Well, we can squint at a complex subject to do the same and make it easier to see the value relationships. Squinting blurs the image and reduces details. It simplifies the space into larger groups of value. This helps us identify the main shapes and the accurate value relationships of those shapes. Complex things like hands can be broken down into primary, secondary, and tertiary forms. Primaries being the absolute simplest primitive volume. Secondaries are the large masses on top of those primaries, such as the big muscle groups and the bones. And tertiaries are the smaller forms, like veins and wrinkles. Squinting helps us to identify those primary forms and the most important secondary forms. Squint at your reference more in the beginning of the drawing and less at the later phases when you want to see more detail.
So many documents, spreadsheets, videos to go through, and the deadline is tomorrow. Oh.
Want to see more details. Digital squint? Even squinting is a learned skill and a really useful tool that can help you understand what you're trying to achieve when you're squinting. Is the medium noise removal tool in Photoshop. This is a little better than the simple blur tool because it keeps the edges more accurate, and I find that it's closer to what I actually see when I squint. In Photoshop, go to Filter, Noise, Median, and use the slider to determine the amount of squinting. I love this painting by Sargent, and when studying his decisions, I applied this filter. This really helps to see things clearly without the beautifully distracting paint strokes and canvas texture. I love how he connected the middle values of the bottom lids to the side planes of the head, instead of making them isolated floating shapes. The strong black cast shadow from the nose is also very powerful to add depth. He reserved the full blacks on the face to mostly the nose and a few spots in the eyes and under the mustache. Keep in mind that digital filters like this are training wheels. Eventually, you want to get to the point where you could do this on your own. You don't want to depend on Photoshop to always solve it for you. If you're drawing from life or from imagination, you need to be able to organize and see groups of values intuitively. But if you're just starting out, this is a great training tool to help you see and eventually get there on your own. Just be mindful that it doesn't become a bad habit. Stepping back helps us get a fresh perspective, but sometimes you might need to step away. One, to get some rest if your eyes are getting tired, and two, because you might require a full day to clear your mind of memories of the values. You might do a drawing that you feel is accurate, only to come back to it the next day and see mistakes that seem so obvious. This ability to see the true values rather than assumed values is a skill that develops with practice. The more you draw, the more you'll train your eyes to override your brain's preconceptions and see values as they truly are. Instead of getting tricked by your reference, you'll be tricking your viewers with your drawings. There's a lot more coming if you get the premium version. We're going to learn about organizing values with value keys and value ranges, better composition, and go deep into light on form. I'll give you exercises and projects to help you practice, and I'll do a bunch of demonstrations and critique videos to guide you along the way. This course already has over 100 lessons about line, shape, perspective. The remainder of this course is all about shading. I hope to see you in the premium section. That's over at proko.com/drawing. Right now, what I want you guys to practice is look at an image and then be able to just squeeze those values down to 2 or 3. A 2-value drawing is known as a no-tan drawing. That's also what my wife calls me, no-tan Stan. So if you're using just 2 values, you really just have your lights and your darks. And obviously, in reality, we look out there, we're seeing way more than 2 values, but you have to choose that threshold of like, anything lighter than this threshold is thrown into the lights, anything darker gets thrown into the darks. And where that threshold is, it's kind of up to you. I mean, it should be somewhere in the middle, but it's up to you, and it's based on your perception, your feeling. This could actually be easier. You have your lights, you have your shadows, now you have what that could be is a container for all of those ambiguous values where you're doing a 2-value drawing, not really sure whether you should put this in the lights or in the darks. Just could kind of go either way. So those values you just put into the mids. That one additional value is like 50% more information, right? I mean, in a way, there is now 2 borders, those 2 thresholds. At what point is it a light or a mid? And then at what point is it a mid or a dark, right? So now you have those 2 decisions. But in a way, it is still a little bit easier to do 3 rather than 2 because you have to do less simplifying, less problem solving. So in the downloads, you're going to find several images of master paintings. And your assignment is to do thumbnail studies of these paintings, focusing on the values. Your goal is to study how these masters are organizing their major value groups. Use the images I provided, but also if you have a master that you want to study, feel free to do those as well. Just remember that some paintings are going to be kind of difficult to break into just 2 values. I mean, it's always possible. Any image can be simplified to 2 values. You could simplify any image to 1 value. Just go, it's all white or it's all black. But some images are just going to have a very clear middle value where the master kind of has already kind of a major 3-value composition, and you're just going to be forced to throw that major part of the composition into a light or a dark, and that might just make it look worse because their decisions are all based on the 3. So my whole point is that with some paintings, that 3rd value might be very handy. And by the way, a thumbnail is just a smaller drawing. It could range from being 1 inch or 5 to 6 inches. And really, I mean, the thumbnail, if you're usually doing paintings that are like the size of a wall, then even like a sketchbook size could be considered a thumbnail. But most of us aren't doing wall-sized paintings. Most of us are drawing this size. To most of us, a typical thumbnail is going to be just a few inches. And the purpose of making them smaller is to force us to avoid details. We don't have room to put details. It's just too tiny. And so we're forced to think about just the major shapes. And if you're familiar with Charles Bargue, he has a wonderful book, and it takes you through the process of shading, rendering light on form. And in his initial stages, he has this no-tan drawing where he breaks it down into just 2 values, and he removes all the details. So it's very similar to what we're doing here. The difference, though, is he's not doing thumbnail studies. In his, they're preparations for longer drawings, but he's still simplifying 2 values and removing details. So these images still serve as great inspiration for this project. Level 2, you're doing the same thing, simplifying your drawings to 2 to 3 values, you're doing thumbnails, but 2 things to make it a little more challenging for you. One, you have to set up your own still life, compose it, light it, take a picture of it, and then do value studies off that. So that is much more difficult than it maybe sound. Well, no, it sounds pretty hard too. But it doesn't have to be complicated. You could literally just put some fruits in a basket, put a light on it, take a photo. You really just want to make sure you have large forms, you have clear lighting on there, so you could do a value study. You can go online, look for inspiration, how to set up a still life, what things to put in a still life. Just look for something that interests you so that you could be excited about doing these studies. And the second thing that makes it more difficult is that you're working from photos. You're not working from master paintings anymore. In a painting done by a master, a lot of that problem solving has been done. They usually filter out a lot of junk from what they're seeing, and they're designing their shapes to look good. But when you look at a photograph, you're seeing everything. You're seeing the raw stuff, all the details, all the noise, and you have to do all that filtering. You have to filter the entire process. You're working from a master painting, a lot of the filtering has been done, and now you're just filtering it even more just to 2 or 3 values. Your inclination is going to be to put all those little details you see in the photo. But fight that urge, focus on big, massive groups of shapes, and simplify them to 2 or 3. That's the assignment. The assignment is not to get beautiful drawings. Remember that a lot of what we're doing in this course is to help you improve specific things, make you get better at very specific skills, so that then when you go to work on your beautiful drawings, you have those skills and they all come together to help you make beautiful drawings. By the way, I made a little value study tool over at proko.com/values. It's like the gradient map layer in Photoshop, but with some additional features. So several of you mentioned that you don't have Photoshop, so this should be very useful. You just load in a painting and add some value steps in this gradient bar. The histogram up here shows you how much of each value